Welcome to Jamaica, the island of real bad man. Some real dog at you, some real gang bang. No run for the fair, the not garbage man. Step up! These are the moments when everybody gun loaded. We not instigate violence, but we believe in the self-defense no matter what. These are the moments when every gangster gun loaded. We not instigate violence, but we believe in the self-defense. Welcome to True Island Stories. This is a continuation of the Peonage history, black history, back in the late 19th century. And we'll continue where we left off, and was just about to bring you, an article done by Miss Kathy Roberts Ford, Chair Associate Professor of the Journalism Department of the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and Brian Bowman, undergraduate journalism major of same Massachusetts, Amherst. And we just want to say thank you for bringing this work to light, and take pleasure in sharing your work with my community. And you guys can look up their work, as I'm sure they have tons more. You can follow them on whatever social media platform, and it's brought to you by the Milwaukee Independent. So I'll just read some of what they have and then bring you a synopsis. The Obama administration pursued a plan to reform it, an entire news organization. The Marshall Project was launched in the late 2014 to cover it. Organizations like Black Lives Matter and the Sentencing Project are dedicated to unmaking a system that unjustly targets people of color. But how did we get this system in the first place? Our ongoing historical research project investigates the relationship between the press and convict labor peonage system, right? While that story is still unfolding, we have learned that few Americans, especially white Americans, know the dark history that produced our current criminal history. The dark history that produced our current. That line is so important because everything connects, and the mental trauma that we developed, it still permeates through our generation and exists to this day because we have not recovered as a people mentally of this terrible traumatic experience that we have been through. If anything is to change, if we are ever to end this racial nightmare and achieve our country, as James Baldwin put it, we must confront this system and the blighted history that created it. So true. During the Reconstruction, and I told you about Reconstruction, which happened after the abolition of slavery after 1865, and that Reconstruction was a laws passed during Lincoln time where blacks could vote and stuff. During Reconstruction, 12 years following the end of Civil War and the abolition of slavery, former slaves made meaningful political, social, and economic gains, as I told you in part 1. Black men vote and even held public offices because we had 1,500 people who were judges and all important positions as black in the South. Yes. Biracial experiments in governance flowered. Black literacy surged. Yes, surpassing those of the whites in some cities. Black schools, churches, and social institutions thrived. Yes, we were on the come up, on the up and up, as some would say. Now, as the prominent historian Eric Foner writes in his masterwork on the Reconstruction, black participation in Southern public life after 1867 was the most radical development of the Reconstruction years. A massive experiment in interracial democracy without precedent in the history of this or any other country that abolished slavery in the 19th century. We were a progressive people. Can I get an amen? In the 19th century. This moment, though, sadly, is short-lived. As W.E.B. Du Bois wrote, the slave went free, stood a brief moment in the sun, then moved back again towards slavery. History is made by human factors and the choices they make. According to Douglas Blackman, author of Slavery by Another Name, the choices made by Southern white supremacists are abolition, and the rest of the countries, accommodation. Explain more about the current state of American life, black and white, than the antebellum slavery that preceded. Designed to reverse black advances, redemption was an organized effort by white merchants, planters, businessmen, politicians that followed Reconstruction. Redeemers employed vicious racial violence and state legislation as tools to prevent black citizens and equality promised under the 14th and 15th Amendments. By the early 1990s, nearly every southern black state had barred black citizens not only from voting, but from also serving in public offices, on juries, and in administration of the justice system. So they reversed everything that the Reconstruction Project had given us and reversed us back into total anarchy and darkness. The South's new racial caste system was not merely political and social, it was thoroughly economic. Slavery had made the South's agricultural-based economy the most powerful force in the global cotton market. But the Civil War devastated this economy. Ironically though, white leaders found a solution in the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery in the United States in 1865 by exploiting the provisions allowing slavery and involuntary servitude to continue as a punishment for crime. Just like I told you in part 1, they arrested black people, misdemeanor, or sometimes nothing at all, with a view, work them to death for revenue to line their pockets. They get rich off black people backs, which still stands to this day that their generation are living off generational wealth. But yet, there's nothing for blacks. There has been no restitution. Even the 1921 Black Wall Street disaster, as I said before in one of my other stories, the only person that got restitution from that disaster were the whites who owned gun stores. With the help of profiteering industrialists, yes, they found yet a new way to build wealth on the bound labor of black Americans under the convict lease system. And here's how that worked. Black men and sometimes women and children, as I told you in part 1, were arrested and convicted for crimes. State laws criminalized petty offenses aimed at keeping freed people tied to their former owners and farms. The most sinister crime was vagrancy. What was vagrancy? The crime of being unemployed, which brought a large fine that only few blacks could afford to pay. That means if they stop you and ask you, "Good afternoon, sir." "Yes, sir, master." "Where you from, boy?" "I's from over there, master." "You got a job, son?" "No, sir, but I'm fixing to get something, sir." "Oh, so you ain't got a job?" "Well, tell you what, you hopping up on here in this cart here and we gonna make sure we get you situated over by the jailhouse. And somebody come get you, or you can send somebody to call Aunt me and one of them to come get you. That's it. They got you lock, stock, and barrel. Black convicts were leased to private companies, typical industries profiteering from regions' untapped natural resources. Get this, as 200,000 black Americans were forced into back-breaking labor into coal mines, turpentine factories, and lumber camps. They lived in squalid conditions, chained, starved, beaten, flogged with the catadine, and sexually violated. They died by the thousands from their injuries, disease, and torture. For both the state and private corporations, the opportunities, profits were enormous. For the state, convict lease generated revenue and provided a powerful tool to subjugate African Americans and intimidate them into behaving in accordance with the new social order, it was said. It also greatly reduced state expenses in housing and caring for convicts. For the corporation, convict lease provided droves of cheap, disposable laborers who could be worked to the extremes of human cruelty. That word, disposable, That's the operative word. That's the key word. Disposable. Something you throw away. Something that has no use. That has no value. No pot value. Use it and throw it away like a used condom. Pshoo. Every southern state leased convicts, and at least 9/10 of all leased convicts are black. You could say all. This 9/10 is almost all. In reports of the period, the term convicts and Negroes are used interchangeably. I mean, once you say convict, you're saying Negro. Once you say Negro, that means a convict. Interchangeably. It's like almost the same thing. A principal difference between antebellum slavery and convicted leasing was that, in the latter, the laborers were only the temporary property of their masters. On one hand, this meant that after their fines had been paid off, they would potentially be let free. On the other, it meant that the companies leasing the convicts often absolved themselves of concerns about workers' longevity. Such convicts were viewed as disposable and frequently worked beyond human endurance. Them work them to death. That's what work beyond human endurance means. More than what you can bear. Them work you. Now, you there at your work and you stand up on your foot all day and tired, and when you reach home you just want a hot bath. Now imagine working till you can't go home. Working, you cannot leave, work, till you just fall down and them just throw you to the side and bury you. The living conditions of leased convicts are documented in dozens of detail. First-hand reports spanning decades, covering many states. In 1883, Blackman writes, Alabama prison Inspector Reginald Dawson described leased convicts in one mind being held on trivial charges, in desperate, miserable condition, poorly fed, clothed, and unnecessarily chained and shackled. He described the appalling number of deaths, an appalling number of maimed and disabled men held by various forced labor entrepreneurs spanning the entire state. That's how they treated us. Dawson's report had no perceptible impact on Alabama's convict leasing system, meaning he reported what he saw, but they didn't give a fuck. The exploitation of black convict labor by the penal system and industrialists was central to Southern politics and economics of the era. It was a carefully crafted answer to black progress during Reconstruction, highly visible and widely known, so they knew it. Everybody was doing it, but nobody cared. We weren't important. As I said, we weren't seen as humans. We were chattels, animals to them, disposable laborers. Something to just use like tissue and just cast away in the toilet. Flush. The system benefited the national economy too. The federal government passed up on one opportunity after another to intervene. So when you have the head of the country spearheading these brutal practices, everybody just fall in line. Just like the other day when a certain man was president. All it takes is one man with an idea and implement his idea, and it turned the whole place upside down. Trust me. Convict lease ended at different times across the early 20th century, only to be replaced in many states by another racialized and brutal method of convict labor. The chain gang. We be working on the chain gang all the live long day. We be working on the railroad all the live long day. Yeah, black people make that song. You're working on the railroad all the live long day. You best believe all day. Hungry, thirsty, dirty, tired, all the live long day. Convict labor, death, peonage, lynching, and the white supremacist ideologies of Jim Crow supported them all. Produced a bleak social landscape across the South for African Americans. A sad time in our history. Black Americans developed multiple resistance strategies and gained major victories through the civil rights movement, thanks to Dr. Martin Luther King, Dr. Lewis, and several others. I have to read that statement again. Very important. Black Americans developed multiple resistance strategies and gained major victories through the civil rights movement, including Brown v. Board of Education, the Civil Rights Acts, and the Voting Rights Acts. Jim Crow fell, and America move closer than ever to fulfilling its democratic promise of equality and opportunity for all. But in the decades that follow, a toughened crime politics with the racist undertones produce, among other things, harsh drug and mandatory minimum sentencing laws that were applied in racially disparate ways. The mass incarceration system exploded, and with the rate of imprisonment quadrupling between the 1970s and today. Michelle Alexander famously calls it the new Jim Crow in her book of the same name. Today, the US has the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world. 2.2 million men and women are behind bars. Even though crime has decreased significantly since the early 1990s, and while Black Americans make up only 30% of the US population, we make up 30% of the incarcerated population. And that's a very high percentage in anybody's book if you're a mathematician. Even if you're not a mathematician, you can figure that out. 40% of police killings of unarmed people are black men, who make up merely 6% of our population. It doesn't have to be this way, said Kathy Roberts-Ford and Brian Bowman. We can choose otherwise, and they're so right. Thank you, Kathy Roberts-Ford and Mr. Brian Bowman, for your important and hard research. And I hope my part of taking your words and work to my community and somebody else can take it further, and we could shed light on our next generation and generations to come, and let them not forget how blacks suffered and how important it is not to forget our past, to navigate the future traffic that's clogging our lives' highway. It's been a minute, but we have come a long way. And our next topic, if Black Lives Matter, it has to matter for blacks to stop killing blacks as well. So if you're listening to me, people, we need to lead by example. Stop killing each other. Whites killing whites and blacks killing blacks. Let's find some form of solution at the bottleneck. We can if we want to. If we can kill them, we can find a way not to kill. But I'll leave you with this for now. And again, thank you, Miss Kathy Roberts-Ford and Mr. Brian Bowman. And again, disclaimer, this is not my work. This is their work, wholly and solely. You can check out their platforms and follow their work. I'm sure they have more. And it was a pleasure bringing their history. And I'll continue to bring more history to you guys on my platform as I do my part as a black man in this world. We're trying to lead my people down the right path. Please like, share, and subscribe as we have come to the end of part 2, the finale of the peonage system in America in the late 19th century. Thank you guys for your time, and please share so we can educate our younger generation and even older generation, okay? And remember, you can support True Island Stories channel by Cash App at StorymanCan or PayPal at trueislandstories@gmail.com. Or check out the merch store now that is up and running. You might find your favorite clothing line in there. Bless you, and may God keep you. But if you choose to pick up the gun or the knife, then there's a chance you might end up on True Island Stories. What will you choose? I hear you feel. Question: what will you choose? Lego the gonna come on TIS News. What will you choose? Cry peace or dead in the field. What will you choose? Lego the gonna come on CVM News. What will you choose? Choose blues, clues. Don't say that with the touch. Nighttime them run out fully dark. Lands on one another, everything a sparks. But who are the piranha? Which one are the shark? Moon and black rims, but the cat same soft. And I estimate the pass and then get them head cock. Screamers and white dream and them a war. Whole place fuck up from them gone with the boss. Scared them bridge dream a rock man dark. Whole place a moan from them like a playboy. When the man drop and who get the joy? Panty ice, you turn star, but what will you choose? Lego the gonna come panty ice news. So what will you choose? Cry peace or dead in the feud. What will you choose? Lego the gonna come pan CVM News. So what will you choose? Cry peace or dead in the feud. What will you choose? What will you choose? What will you choose? What will you choose? Charlie Wap lock down Rockfort. Mikey Pelpa dead in a boat. No drop but him badness a goat. Jet Lee make enough man afraid for God.